You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, and co-host, Keelan Harvey on Alternative Talk AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage experts, Tina Mitchell and Keelan Harvey.
You are listening to The Money Hour at 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, August 7th show. You can also listen to our podcast, Facebook premiere show, or on our YouTube channel. In addition, for additional information on upcoming events, please go to tinamitchellevents.com. I am your co-host technically today, Keelan Harvey. As you know, our host is out. It's a great day to talk about money, and that's what the show is all about, how to make money, save money, so you can build a better quality of life for you and your family. If you're hearing, and this is the slide I was missing earlier, Benny, if you were hearing our show at a different time of day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but we are here to answer any questions or connect with the guests we have on the show today. Please call 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And now on a show, Troy Hunter of the Injury Law Group Northwest. Is your insurance giving you the coverage you need when you need it right here on 1150 AM KKNW? Troy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Keelan. I'm a pleasure to be here.
Well, we are very excited to have you here. We're going to talk about you a little bit here, Troy. You are an amazing man. So Troy Hunter is a personal injury attorney at Injury Law Group Northwest, located in Issaquah, Washington. After graduating from law school at the University of Washington, Troy went to work as an insurance defense attorney. He defended insurance companies for 16 years, litigating all kinds of personal injury claims from car accidents, construction accidents, medical malpractice, and premises liability. But after 16 years, Troy realized he was fighting for the wrong side. 6 years ago, Troy left insurance defense and opened his firm, Injury Law Group Northwest. Troy now represents people who have been injured or damaged by carelessness and negligence of others, and he feels he has found his purpose. He now uses his 16 years of defense experience against the insurance companies he used to defend. How cool is that? You know every little nook and cranny of the other side for 16 years, and now you're using it for the betterment of your clients. Troy, I want to start out right out of the gate, and I actually experienced this myself lately because I didn't update my insurance for the longest time, and my stuff was so outdated, and I'll get into a little bit about that, but let's start with auto insurance. How do you know what you have and if it's enough?
Thanks, Keelan. Yeah, you should talk to your broker, right? You have a policy, get a copy of the policy, look at it, understand it, talk to your broker so that you know what you have or you know what you don't have. Because to be honest, it's kind of like what you were just talking about with regards to central banks. Insurance companies take money in, they take premiums like deposits, but unlike banks, it's really hard to get your money back out. So look at what you have to protect others, your liability to others if something is your fault. But what a lot of people don't really look at is protecting themselves. Do you have insurance that protects you if you need it?
Yeah, Troy, I think, and I'm ashamed to even say this, I think my coverage for somebody else was like $25,000, which would cover a Kia, maybe, no offense to Kia, but like heaven forbid I hit a Range Rover or something. I would have been responsible for all of that. Now I have an umbrella policy and everything's updated, and I'm actually probably overinsured if there's such a thing, but better safe than sorry. Now, my question to you would be, what is the minimum liability coverage a person has, they have to have in Washington State?
Well, you just nailed it on the head, Keelan. The minimum is $25,000.
Oh,
and so, it's required to be insured in the state of Washington if you're going to drive. And the minimum you have to have is $25,000 liability insurance, what you would owe to somebody else if you caused an accident. But I can tell you from a lot of experience, over 20 years of experience, $25,000 is not nearly enough to cover even the most basic of accidents, because you're not just talking about the property damage, of course, you're talking about any personal injuries that might flow out of that. 25,000 gets eaten up pretty quick, and then your own personal assets can be at stake.
Yeah, it's not about just going to find the least expensive insurance. Insurance is there for a reason, and that's to protect you from the, heaven forbid you have to use it. You're going to hope you had that policy that protected you and your family, and especially your assets. The more you own, the more is at risk. I mean, they can take everything from as far as I understand. So if considering how can you protect yourself from another driver that was me at one point that have these low limits and maybe even no insurance coverage at all? I've never been that guy. I think that's one lower, but how do you
Good.
protect yourself, Troy?
Yeah, well, there's UIM coverage, underinsured motorist coverage, and then there's PIP, personal injury protection. Those two acronyms, UIM and PIP, are extremely important to protecting yourself. And really, most people don't even know that those exist or they should have them. UIM insurance is for that driver that is underinsured. They only have 25,000 limits, or that is uninsured. They just aren't responsible enough to have insurance at all. Then if they cause an accident and cause you injury, your UIM coverage pays you for your damages. So if you have $100,000 in UIM limits, you have $100,000 available to you to compensate you for your injuries and damages, including things like lost wages, property damage, any other damages that you might have that flow out of that accident. PIP coverage, personal injury protection, is the medical aspect of it. So it's separate from the other damages. So if you get in an accident, the other driver has no insurance, you have PIP coverage that immediately starts paying for your medical care. If you're transported to the emergency room that day, your PIP coverage will pay those bills from day one.
That's huge. And that stuff adds up. I mean, you just mentioned a few things there that a lot of people probably wouldn't think about. Lost wages, even the transportation, getting in an ambulance. There's a lot of money. Those medical bills can stack up for sure. In your opinion, what do you think is kind of what would you say on how much coverage somebody should have?
So for that medical aspect, you can have 10,000 as the minimum for PIP coverage. But believe me, again, that $10,000, if you go to the emergency room, if you have to have an MRI, heaven forbid you have to have any kind of surgery, that $10,000 goes by really fast. So 35,000 is what, I recommend to clients that they make sure that they have. Then you're looking at having sufficient coverage. Now, if you have health insurance, that's going to kick in after the PIP coverage is exhausted. So you're not unprotected if you have health insurance, but I think you want a good, healthy PIP policy in place. On the UIM, again, it depends on your risk assessment, right? It depends what your income is. If you're a high earner and you get in an accident and you can't bring in that income, how much is enough to cover that? 50,000, 100,000, 150,000? What is your income and what are your debt obligations? That's what you want to take into consideration in looking at what your limits ought to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a moving target, right? I mean, and it's good to update that. I made the biggest mistake. Unfortunately, I did this a while ago, but just letting it go for so long and really not reevaluating your situation and making sure that you're covered. I mean, insurance as a foundational for financial planning is huge. So if I was to get into a car accident and it's the other driver's fault, their insurance will not pay for my medical bills, is what you're saying.
That is exactly right. Even if it's a clear-cut liability accident, you're rear-ended by somebody, and that's clearly their fault. And you go to the emergency room, you get some treatment, you contact their insurance company and say, hey, here's my bills I'm treating. It's clearly your fault. Pay these bills. They're not going to do it. You have to pay for your bills first. That's why it's great to have PIP coverage that will immediately kick in. If you have health insurance, it'll pay for it. Medicare, Medicaid, that'll pay for it. But you have to pay first. Then when you're done treating, when your treatment is over, when you've recovered from your injuries, then you have to make a claim. You make a claim to that insurance company and say, hey, here's all my bills. Here's how much this all cost me. Are you going to compensate me? And whether they will or whether they won't is an open question.
Yeah, that's scary stuff right there. So could you dive into a little bit more detail about how my personal health insurance will factor into the bigger picture here?
Absolutely. They're going to take a back seat as much as they can. So if you have PIP coverage, they're going to let PIP coverage pay until it's exhausted. They're not going to pay $1 until your PIP insurance is exhausted. Then they're going to want to know, is somebody else liable for these injuries? They will start paying for your treatment at that point, but they're going to want to recover out of any settlement that you get, any and all money that your insurance is paying for your care and treatment. And that's something that most people really just don't know. If their insurance company is paying, they're going to want to get paid back.
That makes sense, but you're right. Most people probably don't think about that. My wife got into an accident. Unfortunately, she didn't see any money from anything for years, too. I mean, the process takes a long time, possibly. Now, a question for you, Troy. So if I settle an auto injury claim with an insurance company, do I get to keep the money? Because I know a lot of people think that, oh, I'm going to get rich and all this stuff. Do I get to keep the money? How does that work?
Yeah, and insurance companies take advantage of that ignorance. Believe me, they will send you a letter saying, "Hey, we understand you've had an accident with our insured. You had some treatment, you had some, pain, a couple of days off work. Tell you what, we'll send you $5,000 to compensate you for being involved in this accident. We're really sorry. Just sign this release, and we'll send you a check." If you do that, like I said, most people don't understand. They have to repay their PIP. They have to repay their health insurance. They have to pay back the insurance that is paid for their care and treatment. And the other insurance company isn't going to tell you that. They're not going to make that clear. So you might get a check for $5,000, but you might owe it to pay back all of the medical that's already been paid.
Wow. If anybody's listening out there, and this is striking a nerve, the moral of the story is to call Troy and somebody that's an expert at it and that can navigate all of this for you. Because if you're on your own, there are professionals, they know what they're doing, and you're probably not going to end up in the best situation without somebody like Troy who's got your back to navigate this for you. How would I go about, let's say I do stack up a whole bunch of medical bills, Troy, how would I go about repaying for these medical bills?
So if you get an attorney involved is the best way to do it, as you said, Keelan. And it doesn't have to be me. I'm happy to take any calls, but just find somebody and talk to them and find out what you don't know. Get an attorney involved. They can corral all those bills. They can actually negotiate reduction of some of those, the PIP or the health insurance. They're going to be asking for every dollar that they paid for. But if you negotiate with them and say, hey, we're only going to be able to get this much on a settlement recovery. How about you take 50 cents on the dollar? We can negotiate some of that so more money ends up in your pocket.
Wow. Well, we are down to 1 minute, Troy. I wanted to know, though, before I go, there's one more that I think is on everybody's mind, including mine. How much does a personal injury attorney cost typically? Because everybody always wants to know, what does it cost me? But I'm sure it costs you a lot more without one. So what does it cost?
Yeah, that is a big fear. A lot of people don't even call an attorney to ask any questions because they think, well, it's going to cost me too much to even call. Here's the thing to remember. Personal injury attorneys, like myself, we don't get paid unless and until you get paid, okay? So to call me and talk to me about your incident, free. To have a consultation with me, free. To retain me to represent you in a claim or an accident, free. The only time I get paid is when I get money for you. And then that is typically on a 1/3 contingency fee basis. So it doesn't hurt to call. It doesn't hurt to ask questions. Find out what you don't know. Protect yourself.
Wow, that's extremely transparent, Troy. I appreciate that. Did you hear that, listeners? Free, free, free. He gets paid after the fact when he does the services for you and protects you and your family. So definitely, by all means, reach out to somebody, preferably Troy, because we like him. He's our expert on here. So with that being said, Troy, I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you, Keelan. Really enjoyed it.